Their mouths crashed together, hungry and uneven, breaths tangling as they drank each other in. The kiss turned reckless, a fever neither of them could cool. Buttons fumbled, clothes falling in soft, urgent heaps on the floor, and the world outside vanished until there was nothing but the heat of skin, the scrape of breath, and the wild rhythm of hearts refusing to slow. Before we dive into the story, dear viewers, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment for more exciting stories like this.
Rain slicked the alleys of Gangnam like a sheet of black glass, reflecting red and violet neon. From late-night bars, Seoul pulsed around Sophie in a blur of sound and light car horns. Blaring, bass-heavy club music bleeding from basement doors, the sharp scent of frying food, tangled with gasoline. Her sneakers splashed through puddles as she hugged her jacket tighter, shoulders hunched against the cold. Another night, another shift, another bill waiting on her. Counter. Sophie grew up in Gangnam City, though the mirror never quite matched the streets she called home. Adopted from Africa as a child and raised by Korean parents who'd loved her fiercely before a sudden accident stole them away, Sophie had been building a life on her own ever since. Now the bar was her refuge, the place where she poured drinks for strangers and drowned out the silence of an empty apartment. The basement bar squatted between a karaoke den and a pawn shop, its doorway hidden behind a curtain of flickering LED signs. Sophie slipped inside, her breath catching at the familiar sting of cigarette smoke and cheap whiskey. The air was heavy with sweat and perfume, a low-lit cave for hustlers and night owls. Sophie, Gina, the manager, waved her over from behind the counter. "You're late." Subway stalled. Sophie tied on her apron, ignoring the ache in her calves. Her eyes darted. Across the room, half-drunk salarymen, a couple making out in a booth, a tattooed loan shark counting cash like it was origami. Seoul's underbelly looked glamorous in K-dramas. In real life, it smelled like desperation. As she poured beers and dodged wandering hands, a stranger slid onto a stool. Tall, designer coat, eyes like storm clouds. He dropped a card on the counter, embossed in black and silver. Interested in easy money? His Korean was smooth, his smile too sharp. Sophie stiffened. "I'm working. It's one night. Serve drinks at a private gathering. Good pay, no questions." Her rent notice flashed in her mind, followed by the text from the loan company. Final warning. Sophie bit her lip. "Where?" He tapped the card. Only an address and a time. Midnight. Gangnam Heights. An abandoned hotel turned legend. The Jang Syndicate's playground. Every bartender in Seoul had heard of it. Few came back with stories. "Double what you make here in a week," the man added, already standing. "Say yes or someone else will." He vanished into the smoke, leaving the card like a dare. By midnight, Sophie was in a borrowed black dress that hugged her curves like it had secrets of its own. A driver in a sleek sedan picked her up without a word. The city thinned into dark. Streets and shuttered shops until the car stopped before a towering ruin of mirrored glass. Gangnam Heights looked abandoned from the outside, windows cracked, graffiti crawling over concrete, but the faint thrum of bass promised life within. Inside, the hotel skeleton had been reborn. Velvet curtains and gold chandeliers glowed over a sea of power. Men in tailored suits, women in diamond-sharp heels, laughter edged with menace. Music pounded like a heartbeat. Sophie's pulse kept time. "Keep your head down. Don't ask names," the event coordinator hissed, handing her a tray of champagne flutes. "And don't spill anything." Easier said than done. Sophie wove through the crowd, eyes snagging on tattoos curling over knuckles. Whispers of deals struck in corners. Then the room shifted like the air itself recognized royalty. He entered without announcement. Tall, broad-shouldered, black suit tailored like armor. Jang Min-jae. She'd never seen him before, but she knew. Everyone did. The heir to Korea's most feared Mafia family. His presence cut through the haze like a blade. Conversations faltered. Music seemed to lower itself. Sophie's hand trembled as she offered a drink to a passing guest. The tray tilted. A flute slid. Crash. Golden liquid splattered across a chest of black silk. The crowd inhaled. Min-jae looked down at the stain, then up, straight into her eyes. His gaze was a storm, dark and electric. Sophie's breath snagged. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry. A single brow arched, more curious than angry. You're new. His Korean was low, velvet over steel. Yes, let me get a towel. He caught her wrist before she could retreat. Not rough, but firm enough to freeze her pulse. Heat radiated from his touch. No need. His eyes lingered, scanning her face as if memorizing it. What's your name? The coordinator's warning echoed in her head. Don't ask names. Sophie forced a shaky smile. I'm just a staff. Staff, he repeated, like tasting the word. A corner of his mouth curved. Interesting. Someone called for him in the distance. He released her slowly, deliberately, like a promise. Stay close, Min-jae said. Before disappearing into the crowd, Sophie exhaled, knees weak. Around her, the party throbbed on. Louder now, like it sensed something new had begun. The champagne kept coming, faster than Sophie could count. Strangers toasted to fortunes she'd never see, pressed flutes into her hand with reckless laughter. At first she drank to be polite, then to forget the rent notice folded inside her purse, then because the bass in the ballroom made saying no impossible. By the time midnight bled into something later, the world had softened into a haze of velvet light and honeyed sound. Faces blurred. Music pulsed in her bones. The air smelled of smoke, sweat, and a sweetness she couldn't name. I need. Her words slurred as she set down an empty glass. Bathroom. The hallway beyond the ballroom was a dim maze of locked doors and mirrored walls. Sophie wove through it, one hand skimming the cold marble to keep her balance. She tried a door. Locked. Another. Locked. The third swung open without a sound. Warmth and the faint scent of leather spilled out. A bedroom wide, shadowed, expensive. Not a restroom, but the room felt safer than the spinning corridor. She stepped inside, heart pounding against the fog in her head. Behind her, the door clicked shut. Wrong room. The voice cut through the haze like a blade. Deep, low, dangerous. She turned. He was there. The man from the ballroom, Jang Min-jae. Black suit discarded, shirt unbuttoned at the throat, eyes sharp even in the half-light. Sorry, she stammered, swaying. I thought bathroom. You should leave. Looks you're drunk. His Korean was flat, final. But the alcohol made her brave. Or reckless. Maybe both. It's quiet here. She took a step forward. Then another. The carpet soft beneath her unsteady feet. He didn't move, only watched, jaw tight, as if measuring the threat of a woman too drunk to know better. Go back to the party, he said. Now, or else I'm gonna push you out. Sophie shook her head, hair slipping from its pins. Too loud. Just need a minute. Her knee brushed the edge of the bed as she reached for the wall to steady herself. The motion brought her close enough to feel the heat of him. Min-jae stiffened, a breath caught between command and hesitation. Don't. He warned, but his body was clearly betraying him. Her beautiful brown skin showed under the golden lights as she leaned in, the faint scent of whiskey and rain clinging to her skin. Her palms pressed against his chest, the hard plane of muscle beneath the thin cotton of his shirt. I shouldn't, she whispered, though her fingers curled anyway. His hand shot up, catching her wrist. Not rough, just firm enough to stop her. You don't know what you're doing. Maybe I don't care, maybe I want you. The words trembled out of her, soft and slurred. Min-jae's jaw worked, the struggle visible in the tense line of his shoulders. He could have pushed her away, should have, but the scent of champagne on her breath, the warmth of her skin against his palm, it all bled into the sharp edges of his control. Last chance, he said, voice rough now. Walk out. Sophie lifted her face, eyes glassy but certain. Acting like you really want me gone. He swallowed hard, throat tightening as his eyelids flickered like he was fighting to stay grounded. Her breath brushed against his skin, sparking something deep inside him. The room seemed to tilt. He exhaled a curse, low and broken, the sound of a man losing a fight with himself. When she rose onto her toes, her lips brushed his. A shock, quick and electric. He didn't respond at first. Then the tension snapped. His mouth claimed hers, hard and hungry, as if the night itself demanded it. The taste of whiskey and heat blurred the edges of thought. The strap slid from her shoulders. His shirt buttons loosened beneath her clumsy fingers. Clothes fell like careless whispers onto the carpet. She stepped closer, her chest rising against his, and the air between them throbbed with heat. His hands slid to her waist, fingers trembling as if they couldn't decide whether to pull her in or let her go. "Damn it!" he rasped, voice barely a breath. "Then stop me," she whispered back, her eyes daring him even as her lips hovered a heartbeat away. He didn't. Their mouths crashed together, hungry and uneven, breaths tangling as they drank each other in. The kiss turned reckless, a fever neither of them could cool. Buttons fumbled, clothes falling in soft, urgent heaps on the floor, and the world outside vanished until there was nothing but the heat of skin, the scrape of breath, and the wild rhythm of hearts refusing to slow. Outside, the party roared on, blind to the chain of velvet already tightening in the dark. The first thing Sophie felt was the cold. Not the shiver of winter air, but the soft bite of air conditioning against bare skin. Her eyes fluttered open to a ceiling painted in slow dawn light. Smooth plaster, a chandelier glittering faintly above. For one confused heartbeat, she thought she was back in the tiny apartment she rented above a corner shop. Then the memories bled in. Neon lights, endless drinks, the wrong door. Her stomach lurched. The bed beneath her was wide, the sheets impossibly soft. The faint scent of whiskey and leather clung to them like a secret. She pushed herself up, the room tilting as a dull ache bloomed behind her eyes. The other side of the bed was empty. Min-jae was gone. Her pulse kicked into a panic sprint. She scrambled for her dress, crumpled on the floor like a fallen shadow, and dragged it on with shaking hands. Her stockings were gone. Her shoes, kicked halfway under a chair. Each piece of clothing felt heavier with the weight of memory. What did I do? A flash of his face came back in fragments. Eyes dark as storm clouds, the rough drag of his breath when she kissed him. Heat crept up her neck despite the chill. Sophie forced herself to stand. The penthouse stretched in silent luxury. Dark wood floors, a wall of glass revealing the sleepless city beyond. Gangnam glittered like nothing had happened, but the faint smell of his cologne lingered. Clean, sharp, impossible to ignore. A black card rested on the nightstand. She reached for it with trembling fingers. No name, no phone number, just a silver emblem stamped in the center. A single coiled dragon, its tail forming a number etched in platinum. Beside it, a note written in precise Korean script. "You'll need this." Her heartbeat quickened. Need it for what? A sound behind her. A door shutting somewhere in the suite. Sophie spun, breath caught. A man stepped into the room. Not Min-jae. Broad shoulders, black suit, expression blank as granite. His eyes swept the space, pausing only briefly on her. "You should leave," he said in clipped Korean. "The driver is waiting." Sophie's mouth went dry. Where is? Not here." His tone left no room for questions. Her mind screamed to ask anyway, but instinct warned her off. She grabbed her purse and followed him down a corridor where velvet carpets swallowed her footsteps. No sign of Min-jae, only silence and the faint hum of hidden cameras tracking her every move. The elevator opened to the empty hotel lobby. Outside, morning sunlight stabbed through the city's smog. A black sedan idled at the curb. The driver, another man in a dark suit, held the door without a word. Sophie slid inside, the seat swallowing her in cool leather. As the car glided into traffic, she clutched the black card like a lifeline. The city was blurred by skyscrapers, convenience stores, sleepy commuters. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that eyes followed her from every shadow. Halfway to her apartment, a motorcycle roared past, black helmet glinting. It slowed, matching the sedan's speed, before veering off with a sharp screech. Sophie's breath hitched. Paranoia, she told herself. Just paranoia. But when the driver pulled to a stop in front of her building, he leaned toward her for the first time. "Keep that card," he said, his voice a shade softer than stone. "You'll need it sooner than you think." Then he drove away, leaving Sophie standing in the thin morning light with a hangover, a dragon-etched card, and a creeping certainty that last night hadn't been a simple mistake. Somewhere in Seoul's neon veins, the man she'd met in the wrong room was already pulling invisible strings. And whether she liked it or not, one accidental night had tied her to the Jang syndicate. The night started like any other. Sophie stacked empty glasses behind the counter, the scent of soju and stale beer hanging heavy in the small Gangnam bar. Outside, the city pulsed with Friday night noise. Honking cars, laughter spilling from clubs, the bass of distant music vibrating through the pavement. She was wiping a stubborn stain from the counter when the door burst open. Close up. Now. Hyan, the bar's owner, strode in from the alley, face pale and damp with sweat. Sophie blinked. "What?" "They're coming." His voice cracked like dry wood. "The Jang enemies. They think you're Min Jae's woman." Her stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" "They saw you leave the syndicate party with him that night. They think you matter." He grabbed her arm. "Get your bag. We're leaving." Before she could move, a crash shattered the front window. Flames flared orange against the neon outside. Bottles toppled from shelves, liquor spilling like liquid fire. A second blast rocked the building. Someone had thrown a Molotov. Smoke filled the room in an instant. "Back door." Hyan coughed, pulling her toward the narrow hallway. The air burned her lungs. Sophie stumbled over a stool as another explosion sent shards of glass across the floor. Behind them, men shouted low, vicious words carried by the roar of fire. They burst into the alley. Rain hissed as it met the heat. Sophie gagged on smoke, her eyes watering. "Go south," Hyan rasped, shoving her toward the street. "Busan. Anywhere outside Seoul. Don't stay." "What about you?" she choked out. He gave a tight, desperate smile. "I'll hold them off. You run." A gunshot cracked through the night. Hyan jerked, crimson blooming across his shirt. "No!" Sophie reached for him, but he pushed her away with the last of his strength. "Run!" The alley blurred through her tears. She ran. Past the corner market. Past the gawking strangers. Past the sirens that began to wail too late. She didn't look back until the train doors closed behind her and the Seoul skyline disappeared in the rain. Busan became her exile. She found a cheap room near the docks, walls thin enough to hear the waves pounding against the harbor. She worked wherever she could, cleaning motels at dawn, scrubbing office floors at night. Always in cash, always careful. Weeks turned to months, but the fear never left. Every unfamiliar footstep outside her door made her heart lurch. Then came the sickness. At first she blamed stress, bad food, exhaustion. But when the morning nausea refused to fade, dread settled heavy in her chest. The pharmacy test confirmed it with 2 bold pink lines. Sophie sat on the cold bathroom floor, knees drawn to her chest. Memories of that reckless night in Gangnam flashed behind her eyes. The champagne haze, the stranger's burning gaze, the warmth of his breath when the world spun out of control. Min Jae. His name echoed like a secret she couldn't share. Abortion was the sensible choice. A single woman, no family, hunted by men she didn't understand. But as she pressed a trembling hand against her stomach, she felt something shift. An ache that wasn't fear. "I'll keep you safe," she whispered to the empty room. Pregnancy hardened her. She cleaned offices until her ankles swelled, her back screaming by the end of every shift. Landlords turned her away when they noticed her growing belly. She found another room, smaller and colder. Every night, she dreamed of the man whose child she carried. Sometimes his face was clear, the sharp lines, the shadowed eyes. Other times it was only a blur of heat and danger. But she always woke up alone. Still, she chose life. The babies, she later learned, were hers to protect, no matter the cost. Sophie kept her head down, moved like a ghost through Busan streets, and worked until her body demanded rest. Fear never left, but love kept her moving. The world believed the fire in Gangnam had claimed everything. Only Sophie knew the truth. It had also sparked 2 tiny heartbeats that tied her forever to a man she could neither forget nor forgive. 5 winters came and went before Sophie dared to return to Seoul. Busan had been a safe harbor, but it was never home. Its salty air and endless harbor traffic only reminded her of running, of the smoke and screams that had chased her from Gangnam and the man whose shadow she could never shake. Now her twins were 5 years old, bundles of bright energy who spoke Korean with the effortless rhythm of natives and English with her soft Nigerian lilt. Jaemin had Minjae's dark, almond-shaped eyes and a gaze that was far too serious for a child. So he, his sister by only a few minutes, had Sophie's full lips and the same sharp, high cheekbones, but her smile was pure mischief. The transfer offer had come unexpectedly. A Seoul-based logistics company was recruiting experienced cleaners and junior clerks for its new corporate headquarters. The pay was steady, the benefits good, and the twins needed better schools. Sophie told herself that 5 years was enough time for danger to fade. Surely, the enemies who had burned Hyen's bar had moved on. Surely, he had forgotten the anonymous woman from a drunken night. Seoul greeted her with the same restless pulse she remembered. The neon haze, the bite of cold air carrying roasted chestnuts, the echo of distant music beneath the constant rush of traffic. Her new apartment was small but bright, with a single balcony that overlooked a bustling street market. Jaemin and Sohee squealed at the sight of the tteokbokki stand below, their breath fogging the window. "Iyama?" Jaemin asked one night, leaning against her arm as they watched the city lights. "Will Appa ever visit us?" Sophie's heart tightened. She smoothed his hair, dark and silky like his father's. "Appa is far away," she said softly. "But I'm here, always." It was the only truth she could give them. The first day at her new job arrived on a crisp Monday morning. Sophie dressed with careful simplicity. A cream blouse tucked into a charcoal gray skirt, black flats polished to a quiet shine. She pulled her braids into a low bun and added a single pair of pearl earrings. Professional, unremarkable. The lobby of Jang International Logistics gleamed with white marble and brushed steel. Massive art installation. Polished black chains twisted into the shape of a rising phoenix, hung from the ceiling, catching the morning light. Sophie felt a strange chill as she signed the visitor's log, her name small and neat on the screen. "New intern?" the receptionist asked kindly, scanning her badge. "Yes," Sophie said, forcing a smile. "Report to the 32nd floor. Orientation starts at 9. The director likes punctual people." "Director?" Sophie nodded, unaware that the name behind that title was already burned into her bones. The elevator ride was a slow climb of nerves. Each floor hummed past in a blur of numbers. Sophie kept her eyes on her reflection in the polished doors, steadying her breathing. The doors opened onto a wide corridor lined with glass offices. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a panoramic view of Seoul's skyline, steel and clouds stretching toward the Han River. A senior assistant guided the small group of new interns into a conference room. Sophie settled into a seat near the end of the long table, taking quiet notes as HR spoke about schedules, policies, and team assignments. She almost relaxed until the door opened. The room shifted with a sudden electric silence. A man stepped inside, flanked by 2 aides. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal suit that cut sharp lines against his lean frame. His hair was darker now, slicked neatly back from a face that was all ruthless symmetry. High cheekbones, a straight nose, and eyes like black ice. Jang Minjae. Sophie's breath caught like a snagged thread. He moved with a predator's grace, each step measured, controlled. Time folded in on itself. 5 years dissolved, leaving only the memory of his breath against her skin, the quiet danger in his eyes as the world burned outside their stolen night. She lowered her gaze quickly, heart hammering. Director Jang will give a short address, the assistant announced. Min Jae's voice was deeper than she remembered, smooth but edged with command. Welcome to Jang International. We build more than trade routes, we build influence. Precision and loyalty are expected. Fail, and the market will eat you alive. He scanned the room, his gaze sweeping over the interns like a knife. When it reached Sophie, it stopped. For a fraction of a second, his expression faltered. Recognition flickered in his eyes, sharp, calculating. Then it vanished behind a mask of cold professionalism. Sophie forced herself to remain still, her pen trembling slightly against the notepad. Dismissed, Min Jae said after a few final words. He turned and left without another glance. But Sophie felt the weight of his awareness linger like a phantom hand on her skin. The whispers began almost immediately. In the break room, two interns exchanged conspiratorial looks as Sophie poured coffee. Did you see the new intern? One murmured in Korean. Her twins are in the company daycare. They look exactly like Director Jang. Exactly. The other agreed, voice low but eager. Same eyes, same jawline. Do you think? Sophie gripped the paper cup until it crumpled. Heat flushed her cheeks, a cold panic flooding her veins. She left without a word, heart pounding. Back at her desk, she tried to focus on spreadsheets, but every reflection in the glass walls felt like a threat. They can't know. They can't prove anything. Yet deep inside, she wondered if Min Jae had heard the same whispers, and what a man like him would do with that information. Her fears were confirmed by the end of the week. A message appeared on her company phone. Director Jang requests your presence. Top floor. Now, Sophie's palms went damp. She checked the daycare app. Her twins were safe, napping after lunch. Drawing a steadying breath, she rode the elevator to the executive floor. His office was a fortress of glass and shadow. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city, the Han River glinting in the pale winter sun. A single black leather chair sat behind a sleek desk of polished wood. Min Jae stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back. His reflection in the glass was a silhouette of power. Broad shoulders, sharp jaw, eyes that missed nothing. Miss Adeyemi, he said without turning. Close the door. Her heart jumped at the sound of her Nigerian surname, spoken perfectly. He had done his homework. She obeyed, the soft click of the door sealing them in a tense silence. Min Jae turned slowly. The years had only sharpened him. His gaze locked on hers, unreadable but piercing. You've been very hard to find, he said, voice low and controlled. Sophie swallowed. I didn't know I needed to be found. His eyes narrowed slightly, scanning her face as if searching for cracks. 5 years ago, a bar burned down in Gangnam. The owner died. Witnesses said a foreign woman escaped the fire. The same woman who left my private suite the night of the Jang Gala. Sophie forced herself to meet his gaze. Coincidence. Coincidences don't have my eyes. Her breath caught. He had heard the whispers too. I don't know what you think you. Min Jae stepped closer, the scent of cedar and rain clinging to his suit. Don't lie to me. His voice was quiet, but the weight behind it pressed against her like a physical force. I don't care about the past, he continued. What I care about is why you're here now. Who sent you? Seo Ji-hoon? Another syndicate. I'm not a spy, Sophie said, her voice steadier than she felt. I'm just trying to live my life. Min Jae studied her for a long, silent moment. His eyes flicked briefly toward the daycare tab open on her phone. You have children, he said finally. Not a question. A statement. Yes. And their father?
Hi viewers. Episode 2 is coming soon, and you definitely don't want to miss it. So make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Now let's dive more into the story of Sophie and Min Jae. And don't forget, the next episode will be even more intense as it reveals that the Mafia already has a girlfriend.